Thank you. Good afternoon. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be here. And I thank you at IFPRI for organizing this event. And particularly, this is a very valuable endeavor. I'm really delighted to see this emphasis on time use. Bringing time use to the attention of policymakers is progress in itself. Partly because people say time is money. No, time is infinitely more valuable than money. People say labor is the most abundant asset of the poor. No. For women, labor is neither abundant nor is it an asset. Bringing this time use understanding means that we're bringing to light and making visible what is otherwise simply not seen and not valued, namely the entire realm of unpaid care work. This review bridges these two realms, in effect. You have the visible, market-based, largely measured, not always paid economy in which the agricultural interventions are being proposed. You also have this invisible, household-based, non-market, usually unpaid realm where the women operate, which is, sorry, is it not working? Right. All right. Which is essentially where all the nutrition work that you want to see is happening. We are bridging these two areas. Time, you have heard, is the pathway between agriculture and nutrition. I will submit to you here that time is a harsh mistress in this respect. Why? And I'm going to give you three reasons. The first is that the real value of time use is that you get an aggregate or as complete as possible a picture of what people are doing, of what men are doing, of what women are doing. You compare these things and you have as a basis for understanding the trade-offs that inevitably occur among and between desirable activities and competing uses of time. I would submit that singling out the pathway to nutrition is less valuable in itself. And I would submit to you also that the conclusion of the study that you don't know what the nutritional outcomes are per se about this ag interventions because, in fact, there are so many other differentiating factors that have to be taken into account, diminishes the use of this as a single pathway. The second is that this review emphasizes agricultural activity, and specifically increased agricultural activity, as having an impact on nutrition. I would submit to you that, in fact, the chain of causality can just as easily go the other way. You have, or the women especially, have so much they have to do that is unrelated to agriculture. It may be domestic work, it may be the wood and water fetching, whatever it is. They don't actually have time to do either sufficient or the right kind of agriculture, which has attendant implications for yields and output. So the fact that we're focusing on increased agriculture does not necessarily mean that that's the chain of causality we're talking about. And indeed, the review does say there is no clear-cut evidence of the nutritional implications of these agricultural practices. My third reason for saying that time is a harsh mistress is that there is a very nice statement in this review that says time is a critical factor for nutrition. It's said in the context of a statement that you don't know what the nutritional implications are of these interventions. But when we say time is a critical factor, I would suggest this is actually an unanswered question in this review. In what precise ways is time a critical factor for nutrition? Is it time spent on food preparation? Is it time spent on agricultural production? Is it time spent on acquiring and applying the knowledge about nutrition that is required for good nutritional practices to occur? Is it about having the time to earn income so that you can buy the food that you need? There are many factors here that affect nutritional outcomes that have time implications that may have nothing directly to do with agriculture. And I think it's a matter of some importance for this review to examine what the trade-offs are in terms of time use that are both most and least beneficial to obtaining the nutritional outcomes that we want. Since women especially have to balance and trade off these time uses, I think that's a question that needs to be looked at in more depth. I was specifically asked also to speak to the policy implications, so let me do that briefly. If it's not stating the obvious, the review does conclude very legitimately that what is needed is a gender-sensitive agricultural policy. And in fact, it's been said that just making visible the fact that women do so much work in agriculture is very critical. There's no debate about this. We've heard, and in fact it was emphasized, that yes, these ag interventions raise men's and women's time burdens. So the policy message is actually very unambiguous. It is essential that a full understanding of the labor implications of development interventions, whether or not these are specific to nutritional objectives, must be part of the process of understanding what gets done and what the gender differences are here. This is what needs to be done in terms of the way time is used. The labor tasks of men and women differ. I'm sort of reminded, and some of you will know this from earlier days, it's now a 30-year-old study, Mary Burfisher and Nadine Horenstein in Nigeria. When they looked at the overall time burdens of an ag intervention, they found that there was a 14% increase in the labor requirements of the project. When they did the simple task of disaggregating, they found, well, actually the women have a 17% increase in their time use, and the men only 6%. So even the idea that everybody has increased time burdens needs to be differentiated by this understanding of how this actually differentially affects men and women. The concern that I have with the 4 intervention areas, the coping mechanisms, is that they start from the standpoint, we're going to raise agricultural activity, and therefore we need to cope with that. I think part of the response may have to be, maybe it's a cautionary tale from this review, don't ask women to do more in agriculture if you want better nutritional outcomes. There may be other things that have to be traded off here. It may not be just a matter of raising ag output. Even the idea that there's some direct link between ag production or ag activity and nutrition may, in fact, in the wider time use picture, not be quite as strong as one might think. I would like to draw to our attention the UNDP, through this fantastic work of Diane Elson, has made a case that we really need to act on 3 critical dimensions of time use, as these relate primarily to dealing with unpaid care. And I think this review does some of that very well. These are her 3 R's. One is you recognize that time allocation is a problem, that time constraints are a problem, that unpaid work matters, and that this is indeed an integral part of understanding the full domain and full dimensions of development. So recognize that this is a problem. Reduce the time burdens. Some of that is in here. Some of this is about infrastructure investment, bringing the wood and water closer to the homestead. There's a whole set of things that can be done around infrastructure investments that simply alleviate the aggregate time burdens that men and women have, particularly the women. And the third is to redistribute. Now, what you saw in the slide was, well, we're going to devolve these tasks to other women and children. Well, maybe, but the real redistribution may also be greater burden sharing with the men. And in fact, I have this great story from Rwanda of the men who were at one community very, very happy to do some domestic work, provided it was behind closed doors and none of the other men would see it. So there's a set of questions here, I think, about dealing with that we need to look at. It seems to me, just by way of concluding, the fundamental task here is that the overall workloads of women in both the productive and the reproductive domains must be alleviated. This is true if you want more agriculture, let alone if you want other things to occur. So I think it's really important to have this concomitant alleviation of domestic tasks in the wider sense, so as to be able to focus on what is needed for better nutritional outcomes. I also think then, in a more specific way, you need to come back to this question, what are the uses of time that most contribute to the nutritional outcomes that you want to accomplish? And it may or may not be agriculture. There may be other things that need to be a part of this. And finally, just to support Chris's point, I think that we know there's a lack of good data. We know that we need more data. We know that we need to bring good time use data into the policy realm. I would agree that the research agenda does need to improve both the quality and the usefulness of time use data. It needs to tackle this great problem of simultaneity, which is really significant in a time allocation sense, and to look at what all household members are doing, including the men. Thank you.